to the Purple Nation podcast. A podcast reminding us that we live in a diverse nation diverse in faith, diverse in culture, diverse in politics, and diverse in thought. Though we are a diverse nation, we are one nation, not a red nation, not a blue nation, but a purple nation. Well, hello, my fellow citizens of the Purple Nation. Today, we are going to talk about life. And we're going to talk about the inconsistencies that exist on both the left and the right, on both red side and blue side when it comes to issues of life. And so what's going to happen is we're going to look at several issues that revolve around life. And at the end, I'm going to tell you where I stand on each of these issues. Here's the thing to understand, that on these issues, when it comes to left and right, there are some inconsistencies. And some of those inconsistencies just come from where a person is ideologically and can be explained. But we do have to be willing to admit that the inconsistencies exist, and we need to be willing to talk about how we can bridge the divide, if at all possible, with some of these issues. So the very first issue, we're going to jump right in, and we're going to talk about the issue of abortion. Why? Well, because abortion has been in the news an awful lot lately. There's the abortion bill in Texas, which outlaws abortions. I don't remember the weeks for the Texas law. I do remember that the case that is before the Supreme Court that they just heard from Mississippi, the line is 15 weeks. And so abortion has been out there, and there is a very stark divide between people on the right and people on the left, red and blue, when it comes to this issue. The interesting thing is that if you talk to people, there's a lot of crossover on this issue. There are people who call themselves conservatives, people who are red, who are on the right, that are pro-choice. And there are people who are on the left that call themselves liberals, that are more blue-leaning, that are pro-life. And what's interesting about this particular issue is that it makes people politically homeless. Now, what do I mean by that? I mean that those people on the right who are pro-choice find a difficult time finding a home on the right, find a difficult time finding a home as a person who leans red, simply because there are a lot of people that will not accept someone who is pro-choice. And politically, you are non-existent. It just can't happen. And it's the same thing on the left. Those people that tend to be more pro-life, maybe they agree 100% on the party platform of the liberal side of the aisle, except for this one issue. Well, they are unelectable. And we have to ask ourselves, well, for one, why is that? And what are the main issues here? So let's start with the pro-life side of things. Now, while a great deal of individuals who fall on this side of the aisle do fall there because of religious reasons and what they believe religiously. There are non-believers, there are atheists, there are people who are agnostic, that for moral reasons, a basic moral code, also are pro-life. And the bottom line is that for many, life begins at conception and There needs, and we need to respect that life. We need to respect that existence. And because of that reason, abortion for some should be made totally illegal. Uh, some won't carve out any exceptions except for usually if the mother's life is in danger. Some are willing to carve out exceptions for rape and incest. And it all comes down to the belief that in our founding documents, we talk about the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And that life for them, although that life depends on the body of another person in order to survive, it's still life. And the state should protect that life. Now, of course, on the other side of this argument, pro-choice, is that it's my body, it's my choice. I should be able to terminate that pregnancy if I so desire. Now, there's a lot of things that go back and forth about this argument. And the fact is that many people, most people who are pro-choice would agree that that the third trimester, abortion should not be available outside of some very, very stringent conditions. Most people are not abortion right up to the time of birth. Let's establish that. But they do believe, hey, you know what? This is, especially in the beginning, it's not a life. And if women are going to be equal, if women are going to have the equal rights toward healthcare and the like, that abortion must be legal. And abortion is a right. Now let's talk about how we can bridge this divide at least somewhat, okay? First of all, we have to be honest about abortion, in that no matter what you believe about when life begins, that abortion is the ending of a potential life. If you're not a life begins at conception person, all of us have to admit that abortion is the ending of a potential life. And thus, because of that, it is a very, very major decision. It is a very major decision that this woman is making. The next thing that we have to be willing to admit, and this is a Purple Nation thing, this is something that I think should bring us together, is that at some point before birth, at some point before the woman gives birth to that child, that is a life. Now, we're not going to agree on when that is, but what we do have to establish and admit is that at some point, that whatever you think it is, whether you think it is just a glob of cells, where you think it's just the fetus, whatever you think it is, at some point it ceases to be that and becomes a life. All of us, regardless of where we stand on the issue, should be willing to admit that and accept that. So that can help us to at least somewhat come together. Right? This abortion issue is one where it's going to always be a fight, but at least we should be able to come together and say that there is the potential for life at the moment of conception, even if you don't believe that it is life, there is the potential for life. And at some point during that pregnancy, before the mother gives birth, there is a life that she is carrying within her. So that's where I believe we can come together. That's where we are on abortion. Yes, that is a issue that divides our nation, and that issue is not going to be solved with whatever the Supreme Court decides in the spring or the summer. But it is not an issue that has to tear us apart. And it is an issue where we don't have to be a red nation or a blue nation, where we can be a purple nation and come to agreement on at least some points. Now, let's talk about another issue of life. And this is not seen as often as an issue of life, but let's talk about entitlements, things like cash assistance, things like the SNAP program, also known, and for those of us old enough to remember, the food stamp program, welfare in general. Now, on the left, we'll start with the left this time. We'll just switch back and forth. And on the left, they look at these programs and they say, look, these are equity programs. These are equality programs. These are programs that seek to lift people up. These are programs that are necessary in order to help the least of those among us. There are people that need food assistance. They need this to live. They need this cash assistance to live. They need this rent assistance to find housing in order to live. And to go back to the abortion argument, many on the left would say, you know, on the right, you are concerned with people before they're born, but you don't particularly care about them after they're born, because you don't care about these programs that are needed, and that in many cases, people on the left feel are underfunded, and in some cases, grossly underfunded. Now let's talk about how the right sees this, because the right, people on the right, more red-leaning people, they're going to say, oh, we don't have a problem with these programs, these entitlement programs. What we have a problem with is that there aren't enough checks and balances put in place in order to stop abuse. The right would say, why is it a problem to have a work requirement for someone on welfare who is able-bodied and can work? They would say, well, why is it a requirement? Why is it a problem to have certain requirements that one must meet in order to receive these federal dollars? Why is it a problem that we test people for drugs to make sure that they aren't using this cash assistance in ways that it shouldn't be used? They're going to say that, hey, you know what? It's good and it's right that we should take care of people. But in taking care of people, we also should make sure that what we're doing is giving people assistance to give them a hand to lift them up, not to make them perpetually dependent. That's a big issue with people on the right, is they don't want people perpetually dependent on the government. They want to give people a hand and help them, but eventually these programs in their mind are meant to be temporary. So where is the purple nation on this one. How can we come together? Well, we can accept that there are going to be people in our society that need help. And we can accept that it is better to teach a person to fish than it is to give them a fish. But sometimes you got to give them the fish because they don't know how to fish. So yeah, we can teach them how to fish, but while we're teaching them how to fish, we have to give them fish as well. So what we have to agree on is that, and I think we're almost there actually, is that there are people in our society who fall between the cracks. There are people in our society that need help, and we should be willing to help them. Now, we are going to disagree on how, we're going to disagree on numbers, but we can work that out if we accept the fact that people need help. Now, to speak to my friends, my brothers, my sisters, my fellow citizens on the right, my fellow Reds, what specifically we have to be willing to do is step back and understand that everyone who is in a bad situation is not there because they're lazy. And everyone who's in a bad situation is not there because they made bad choices. And even if they are there because they made bad choices, it is in the best interest, it's in the best interest of society that we help to lift them up. Because if we don't help to lift them up, then there is the potential of those people engaging in criminal activity in order to take care of themselves. So we have to change on the right, specifically, my friends, the way that we look at those who are less fortunate. Not everyone's there because they're lazy. Now, don't get me wrong. There are some that are there because they're darn lazy, and we need to figure out a way to weed them out. They do not deserve the handout that they are getting if they are not willing to work. You don't work, you don't eat. Yes, we understand that, but we also have to understand the fact that there are many. Yes, they made bad decisions. So what? They need help now. And there are those who are there because they just had a whole lot of bad luck. You do realize we just went through a pandemic in which a lot of people got themselves in situations that they can't get out of through no fault of their own. They didn't create COVID. And so we need, specifically on the right, we need to be aware of that. My brothers and sisters on the left, y'all just have to get to the point where y'all admit, yeah, some of these people are gaming the system. And yes, we should put safeguards in effect that help to prevent people from gaming the system. And also that you on the left, my brothers and sisters on the left, have to be reminded of the dignity of work. Many people want to work. They want to provide for themselves. And so it is okay to put in place incentives and things that help people to get back on their feet so that they don't need these programs anymore. That is not undignifying. That is not a lack of dignity. That is actually helping to provide dignity. You know, before I move on, I want to share this story because I think, especially for my brothers and sisters on the left, that this might help. There was a gentleman who needed some help. And the neighbors and everyone, they got together to help him out. They raised some money to help him out. And his response to that was, well, what can I do? Well, what can I do? And people were saying, no, this is just to help. He's like, no, I can't just accept this. I need to do something. And so what he did was he did little odd jobs for each and every one of those people that helped him out. Now, understand the reason why that happen, the reason why that needed to happen is because he needed and they needed to help him to maintain his dignity. He wanted to do something to earn what was being given to him. Now, the people who were giving it to him weren't giving it to him so that he could work for them. They were giving it to him out of the kindness of their heart. They were giving it to him because they cared, but he felt like he needed to earn it. And we need to remember, my friends, that there is a dignity in work. Okay, let's move on. Let's talk about health insurance. Health insurance. Let's go to my friends on the right again. I should not have to pay for someone who smokes 5 packs of cigarettes a day, who doesn't eat the right foods, who's overweight, who doesn't do the things that are necessary to maintain their health. I shouldn't have to pay for that. What gives them a right to take my money to pay for their health care when they're not even doing what is right to maintain their health? Health care should be private. We should do what we can to gain proper access, and we should do what we can to maintain a good quality of care. That is where many people on the right are going to be. The government should not be in the healthcare business. Now, on the left, they're going to say healthcare is a right. And because it's a right, the government should provide it. Good, quality, affordable healthcare is a right. So how do we bridge the gap here? And I believe that we do that by, once again, accepting the fact that a healthy people are a productive people. Listen to me, my friends on the right. A healthy people are productive people. And so if we can do some things to make sure that people are more healthy and are doing the things that they need to do to get that good quality health care, however that looks, whether that is through the government, whether that is through the private sector, whether that's through a public-private partnership, we do want to make sure that as many people as possible are getting the quality health care that they can, because a healthy people are a productive people. Now, on the right, you're not going to believe in healthcare as a right. On the left, you do, and we're not going to agree on that. But we do agree that the more healthy a society is, the more productive it is, and the happier it is. So let's talk about those things that we can do together to make sure that the largest amount of people are getting healthcare in a way that is palatable to both sides. So let's move from there and let's talk about the death penalty. This is a big one. People on the right, no, actually, I'm supposed to start on the left this time, so let's start on the left. It is not, it is immoral, and it is not for us to allow for the state to kill people. Why is it that it is not right for a person to murder, but we allow for state-sanctioned murder? It is wrong, it is immoral, and the fact is that we have probably throughout our history executed people who were innocent. And therefore, this death penalty should end. Now, on the right, there's going to be this thought process that, hey, you know what? There are some people that are so dangerous to society that they need to be removed from society. Where do we find the Purple Nation on this? And here's one where I have to admit, I don't know that we do. This might be one of those where we just have to see which direction the country is going in terms of a belief in the death penalty or not. There's really no middle ground here. You either believe that the state has the right to enforce the death penalty or you don't. So you have to, really the only thing I see is that you have to advocate for your side. So where am I? Because I always believe in being transparent, and you all know that I am right of center. I consider myself pragmatically conservative. I am also a man of faith. I am a pastor. I am one who, when I look at the abortion issue, I believe that life begins at conception. In an ideal situation, we would not have, we would live in a society where people not only did not have abortions, but didn't want to have abortions. That is not the world that we live in. It's not where we are. So what I say is, let's come up with a common sense time. Let's sit down, all of us, and come up with, okay, at this point, we should not be having abortions. We know that a child can survive outside the womb at 22 weeks. We know that because it's happened. A child has been born premature, 22 weeks, that child several weeks later went home. That child is alive. So let's sit here and let's have a common sense conversation about life, about what we know scientifically, about our understanding of that child and understanding of the growth and understanding of the development. Understand that what we know now is a whole lot different from what we knew when the Roe versus Wade decision came down in 1973. We know a lot more about that child that is inside the woman's womb now. So can we sit down commonsensically and have a conversation about when we believe as a society? Because what I believe is not what society believes. So what can we have a conversation about what we believe as a society is life? When do we believe that child that the woman is carrying as a society becomes a life? Now, what I'm going to do in church is I'm going to continue to teach that life begins at conception. I'm going to be talking to my youth and the people within my church about other options beyond abortion, and hope that they make that decision. And if they don't, Well, they don't, but they're still, they're not going to lose the love of their pastor. Okay, yeah, I don't agree with the decision that you made there. And that's another thing that we have to do. We can't ostracize people who don't agree with our way of thinking. And can we also agree that I believe that abortion should not be a form of birth control? Can we agree with that as well? That is not only a bad thing, that is something that for women is unhealthy. Can we agree with that? Entitlements. My belief here is very simple. Let's give people the fish while we're teaching them how to fish. Okay. I believe that the way that we should teach about entitlements is that these are not meant to be lifelong programs. These are meant to be programs that lift you up to a certain point, and then you're able to live on your own. Now, that being said, I also believe that that means that there needs to be some changes in the structure of these programs in terms of, one, how they're financed, in terms of the amount that we are giving, maybe because I do believe maybe that amount is not sufficient. And we need to make sure that those who are gaming the system, that there's a penalty for that. There's an actual penalty for trying to cheat the system. Health insurance. Okay. My belief is that health insurance is not a right. But hear me out, because don't just stop with that sentence. Hear the rest of what I'm going to say. Health insurance is also not a privilege. When you live in the most advanced and one of the richest countries in the world, health insurance is a responsibility of the nation. So are you hearing what I'm saying here? This is Franklin's belief. Health insurance is not a right. People do not have a right to health insurance. Health insurance is not a privilege, but it is a responsibility of this nation to make sure that everyone has an opportunity and has access to good quality health care. Now, what does that look like? Well, I'm not a politician. So I have to say that I don't have necessarily that answer. That's for our political friends to work out. But it is we are a technologically advanced, wealthy nation. We should figure out a way that access to good quality healthcare is there. Now, that being said, some people might choose not to access that healthcare. Well, that's their choice at that point. But we also need to make sure that, in my opinion, while the government will probably have to be involved in something like this, we want that involvement to be as limited as it can be and still get good results. I guess that's just the conservative in me. Now let's talk about the death penalty. And this is one where I get in trouble with everybody. Nobody likes my answer on this. Because I am pro-life, but not for the same reasons that many of my other friends are pro-life. I truly do believe that there are certain people, Ted Bundy, the Oklahoma City bomber, the bombers of the World Trade Center, had they survived, there are certain people that are such a danger to society that society is safer if those people are not here. But I cannot support the death penalty because our justice system is imperfect. Right in the area where I live, we just released a man who spent 43 years in jail for a crime that they now believe he did not commit. Now, had that state had the death penalty, the fact is there is no going back. Oops, we made a mistake. Sorry, you're dead. But yeah. And that is the reason that I cannot support the death penalty. I cannot support the death penalty because we have an imperfect justice system that makes mistakes. And if we put a person in jail for 20, 30, 40 years, yeah, we took that time from them, but at least they have time to live the rest of their life. And we can at least try to pay some form of restitution to them for the time that they spent in service to the state that they shouldn't have had to spend. We can try and make it up to them. But if we take their life, the death penalty is the one form of punishment that is irreversible. And so I cannot support it, not on the moral grounds that I just don't believe in the death penalty, but on the grounds that I don't believe in a penalty that cannot be reversed if we make mistakes. So that's where I am on these issues, on abortion and on welfare, healthcare, the death penalty. And I believe that although we are far apart on many of these issues, on most of them, with the exception of maybe the death penalty, we can find some common ground. And I would even say with the death penalty, to my friends who are pro-death penalty, I understand, trust me, I understand your argument. There are people, again, that really should not be a part of this planet because of the things that they've done. They're too dangerous. But I would ask you to just think about what happens if we're wrong, because it does happen. What happens if we're wrong? So with that, I hope that you have taken in, and I hope I've given you some things to think about on these issues of life. I personally say that I'm pro-life all the way across. I'm pro-life when it comes to abortion. I'm pro-life when it comes to welfare. I'm pro-life when it comes to healthcare. I'm pro-life when it comes to the death penalty. I'm pro-life all the way across the board. Now, again, in some cases, there are some inconsistencies, and that just happens. We're human beings. That's going to happen. And if you have a way to defend and you've thought out your process and the inconsistencies are still there, then so be it. I just want us to get to the point where we can stop being so divided and fight for your side, fight for what you believe in, but look for that common ground when it can be found. Because the bottom line is, when it comes to us, we are one nation. Yeah, we're one nation and we are diverse. We're diverse in religions. We're diverse in our politics. We're diverse in the way that we think. But we are one nation, not a red nation, not a blue nation, but a purple nation.